I'm just always so thrilled to see the wisdom that emerges, when we set the right kind of situation out, uh, creating the good psychological safety and really, inspiring goals for people that they create. But just and seeing the wisdom that comes out of people when they come together and talk from many different perspectives. And I love that light in people's eyes when they feel heard. I was working with somebody. I'm doing a part of a large scale culture change process. And there's just one person who said, I almost left the organization. And then I was asked to be a part of this culture team. And he says, now I absolutely love being here. And he's like, and 2 years after that, he got hired, another part of the organization, to be their culture leader. It was really, really cool to watch that dynamic from someone who's so cynical to eyes open, and now is a leader on the forefront of that.
Mhm. So the wisdom you said about the wisdom that emerges in the room.
Yes, yeah. So it's that collective wisdom. You and I have chatted about that before, where hearing multiple perspectives at different angles and really setting that atmosphere where we're listening to understand and to build on each other. Um, and one of the things that's so cool about it, so I mean, I've been doing this, I've been doing specifically culture work for about 27 years, something like that. And one of the coolest things is I see that even though I've been doing this a long time, whatever I predict is going to happen is not true. I don't know what the best outcome is going to be, or the best solutions. People come up with things that, to me, I'm like, really? That's what you want to do? Okay. And they do it, and it's fantastic. And that, I think, for me, when I hit a point in my career where I realized I didn't have the right answers and I didn't have to, that was a huge relief. And I think I gained a lot more humbleness about it. And at the same time, became much more effective in the process. And I think that's part of the artistry I kind of mentioned in that, is that the art of really listening and pulling things together and then deciding, hey, maybe this might be the next step, but not telling them this is the next step, having a conversation about it and figuring out what they think and pulling it together.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Can you tell me how you became okay with not having all the answers?
Yeah, it was interesting, Abby. There was a time, so I did my first couple culture uh, change projects, and they were very successful. And so I got kind of arrogant, and I found myself kind of like, haha, I know so much, I'm so smart. And no surprised, my efficacy dropped, right? So people weren't listening to me as much, the rapport wasn't being built, the ideas weren't as good. And it really hit me. And I wish I remember exactly what was that helped me realize what was going on with me. But I came to this realization, and I put above my desk for about 2 years, I had up there, focus more on learning than knowing. Because I realized I'd fallen into that trap. It's a kind of a trap I call expertitis. I'm such an expert that I know the right answers. Um, and so that, when I realized that, and I went and I got better at listening and asking questions, and focusing on the collective wisdom piece. And it's actually a lot more gratifying. It's not, maybe not as much ego stroking, right? From that standpoint, I don't walk around like swaggering, but it feels really real and grounded. And it's really gratifying, as I said before, watching other people grow instead of trying to be the sage in the stage, as they say, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I want to bring my wisdom for sure, or my experience, but it's really cultivating that collectively is just so much more gratifying.
Mhm. To what extent does, or how have you helped groups actually learn to focus more on learning than knowing?
Yeah, that's hard, I think. It's interesting because for many people, particularly like when I did work with NASA engineers, they're like some of the smartest people on the planet, right? And they're brilliant. Um, or a CEO who's used to really, being very decisive and sees being decisive as a very important thing. Um, and so usually what I do is I tell stories of my own, uh, failings and stuff like that. And talk about, wow, I made this kind of assumption, and I backfired big time. Or I'll tell like there was a bank. My first culture project. I was working for a few years with a regional bank, and at one point I was brainstorming, or I had groups of people. We had about 200 people in a room brainstorming, and they came up with an idea they wanted to help enhance culture, which was to let each of the branches get a small amount of money and decorate the way they wanted to. And to me, that sounded like, really? That's it? That doesn't seem like much. That's the big deal. But we had committed to asking them to find out what they wanted, and it was very highly popular, and it really, really worked. And I've learned that over the years. I never know. Like almost every time, the best answer that really works, I'm like, really? But they're not trying to please me. They're trying to please themselves, and they know. But collectively, I should say they know. There's no one person that really knows the right answer. But if you get a lot of people together and then they have a voting process on it, it's just so much. Yeah, it's not about me being right. It's about helping them find what's best for them. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So now, can you share a moment from your work that helped shaped how you think about positive transformation?
Yeah. I think I kind of did that there, but interestingly enough, I was an associate with a small change firm. I won't say the name because I'm about to say bad things about them. But one of the things that hit me from that is that the internal dynamics, people did not walk the talk. I was shocked repeatedly at how disrespectful people were to each other and to me. And it was an interesting piece. And I thought, and I watched the culture work that they did, and they certainly had some success in it. But one of the things that I felt, and probably the reason I left that firm, was that I want to walk the talk that we're talking about, right? I want to be an example of it, and authentically. And I didn't like the inauthentic piece that I was seeing there, and I think one of the things it did for me is it helped me really look at myself on a regular basis. Like, am I making sure that I'm really being as authentic as I can? I mean, authentic and what's appropriate. So like what I like to think about it, I want to be as authentic as it's helpful. I don't want to like talk about Lord of the Rings that I love when it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? But bring that authentic feeling, really try to behave the way we're talking about. And then people can learn from that. And that's actually, I think, one of the most gratifying things for me when someone says, yeah, I feel like you embody what you're teaching us. Yes, that's good. It took a long time to get here. It wasn't easy. I didn't have any of these traits naturally when I was young. So it's really exciting.
Mm. Well, you've spoken about authenticity, walking the talk, and do you want to say anything about, you just said, it took me a while to get there. Do you want to say anything about how you got there or what it took for you to get there?
Yeah, absolutely. So there, there's many different skills that I teach that have become part of who I am to this point. I think probably one of the most powerful ones is yes and, as you and I have spoken about. And I had the amazing opportunity to do improv comedy on the side for a few years, and it was so eye-opening to be coached about, like my comedy mentor would say, your job is to make everyone on the stage look good and to build on what other people bring out, right? It was such a radical different way than I had been brought up with. And like I'd heard people kind of say that as a pie in the sky, oh, you should be this way. But I always thought, yeah, that's just not real. That's not real life. But practicing that on stage really, it made it so much more fun, and it was interesting. It was a start to change the way my brain worked. And then I started saying, hey, I should apply this in my real life, off stage. And I first started doing it at work, which was very helpful. I went from sometimes having power struggles with clients to having much more rapport building. really listening to them, seeking to understand and understand, build on what they're saying instead of trying to correct them so much and so on. And I would say, I mean, that's obviously been extremely helpful professionally, but also my personal life. I used to be very sarcastic, and it's one of the things I got from doing comedy was that if the audience isn't laughing, it's not funny. It's just right. It doesn't matter how witty I think I am. And so if I'm being sarcastic at a party and no one else is laughing, it's not funny. And if I'm being sarcastic with my partner and she's not laughing, it's not funny, right? So really I started changing the way I'm thinking about that and saying, hey, I want to make humor together instead of make humor at the expense of others. And the yes and really helped me to do that a lot more. And it's like I had a partner where she used to be intimidated by how fast I would make jokes and puns and things like that. But when she made one little pun, I would just like, that's awesome. She said, it wasn't that good. I'm like, but the fact that we're playing together with it is great. And after a while, we started having like pun contests and just for fun, and we would just celebrate each other's puns. And so I just find that life is so much richer when we celebrate each other's goodness, happiness, humor, whatever it is, and then build on it. Right? It's like I crave it myself, so why not help other people get that kind of information as well? It's a win-win situation, which is great because like when I was younger, I did not know that was possible. So yeah, it's nice. There's many other things like therapy and all kinds of other stuff I've done that have really helped. But yeah, that's I think
Well,
one single point that's so powerful.
right. The fact of finding improv is so amazing. When I discovered improv, I failed, Bob. I failed at improv.
It's very tricky. It's a very unique skill.
I mean, we were doing scene-based work, and I just couldn't figure it out.
Right.
But eventually I did. I'm part of an applied improv network, which
Oh, are
isn't
you
about
really?
it's not about stage.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
about the kinds of
Yeah,
exercises you can do, like yes and or other things, which I do use now in my work because it just it makes people fully present,
yes.
and it's fun, and it removes your inhibitions basically because you have to respond, and like you said, our job is to make other people look good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no judgment at making guesses. It's just appreciated.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to hear more about that from you at some
Uh,
point. What
sure.
like one of the ways I've incorporated and around innovation is kind of funny. Um, so people often say when they want to hear all kinds of ideas, they say there's no such thing as a bad idea. But obviously there are many bad ideas. Most ideas are bad. So instead of trying to kind of do that lie to make people feel safer, instead say, hey, we want your good, brilliant ideas and your bad ideas and your crazy ideas. We even want illegal ideas. We won't do anything illegal, but we want to hear just the crazy stuff. We want to hear silly ideas. And I love it kind of comes back to the point you're talking about where people start now have so much fun just throwing out all kinds of ideas. Whereas before there was so much intimidation about it. And they were afraid of, well, the kind of sarcasm, right, that I used to bring to situations. But you remove that in those kind of what we call it the SM brainstorming sessions. And it's joyous, really. It's very playful and joyous. Yeah.
Joyous is a great word for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you allowed people to bring your good ideas and bring your bad ideas, and it sounds like you're actually creating a space where it's okay to fail.
Well,
And
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, you go.
I was just going to say, I prefer the way Billie Jean King said this in an article, which someone asked her. So, for anyone who's listening doesn't know, Billie Jean King was the best women's tennis player of her time, possibly in the world. Probably, yeah, she's a phenomenal player. And somebody was asking her, "Is like, okay, so yes, you've won more matches, or you won more important matches, but you've also lost a lot. What do you think about those failures?" She says, "I don't think of them as failures. I think of them as experiments." And so it's the same thing here. Instead of saying, I want to leapfrog over that it's okay to fail and just change the terminology altogether to say, get out there and experiment. and try a bunch of things until something works, right? It kind of goes again beyond the concept of is it success or failure. It's where we're learning.
Exactly.
Yeah, so failure of course is an inevitable part of that. At times there's going to be plenty of failures, but the focus isn't the failure. The focus is, are you learning?
That's right.
Yeah.
Roger Federer said something about that.
Is that right? Oh, interesting.
He said that in your tennis life, you are going to lose a lot of matches. You're
Yeah.
going to win slightly more or many more than you lost, but losing matches is part of the growth of a tennis player. And as you said, the focus there is on learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Just make sure that you're getting better from it, however that is, gaining
Yeah,
skill, practice. Yeah.
yeah. So when we talked, you spoke a lot about compassion, Bob.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if you can speak to how compassion shows up in your work.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned to you, I can't remember who first coined this term of this equation, but they defined compassion as they say is empathy plus action equals compassion. And I really love that because there's been some really great research into the difference between just empathy and compassion, right, with action. And so, and I'm going to dive into it real quick. But one of the key great things it shows is that with compassion, both the giver of the compassion and the receiver of the compassion grow from it. They
Mm,
literally the brain cortices get larger, get stronger, right? Whereas chronic stress makes them smaller. They grow more connections. So it's biologically shown to be helpful for growth. But in terms of the work, it's extremely helpful because we talk about listen to people with curiosity, first seek to empathize with them, so and then act. What can you do, even if it's just to offer, like, do you want me just to listen? Is that what you need right now, or do you want me to help you with something? Either way, you're acting to do something about it. And so we actually do yes and for compassion activities to help people practice that. And then we have them practice that with in their one-on-ones with people, and do it with other people around them. And it was great. Before I started the culture change process at the Red Cross, I had done a speech with them on resilience, leadership resilience. It was their top about 60 leaders, and I heard they were looking at culture stuff, and I said, "Can I weave that in there?" And they said, "Yeah." And so I had them practicing the yes and compassion and things like that because there's a very numbers driven this particular part of it because they focus on blood drives and manufacture of the blood products, and so um, you have to be very numbers driven to be able to succeed and make enough money to survive. Um, and so sometimes that can wash away some of the passion and the compassion. But like 6 months later, a woman who had gone through that was in another training of mine. She said, Bob, for those 2 hours when we were doing this exercise together, I felt like I lived in a better world. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I literally teared up when she said that. It was one of the most beautiful compliments I've ever received. And so it's teaching it in those ways, having them practice it. And particularly like with one of the biggest, most challenging areas and most successful eventually was working with union management issues. So I was training both people in the union and management about this and how to I teach them a few different things, but that was one of the things, which is to listen from a place of compassion with a positive common goal. Instead of going in and saying our goal is to beat you or to make you submit, our goal is to do what's best for the organization as a whole over time, for everybody. Um, and we'd have very specific goals, but essentially that type of thing. And having them practice this and even doing some of the games, ahead of time to get people in that mind frame. And of course, at first, there's people like, what is this stuff? This is crazy. And not every person bought into it, but enough did that it really made a difference over time. And their negotiations really benefited from their practicing those things together. And that was really, really gratifying to see that because you're never not quite sure if it's going to happen or not, right?
right.
It's a real risk. But one of the things that was wonderful was like we had a culture summit. We had 3 culture summits, and the first one though, there's a lot of very cynical folks who showed up to the summit, and particularly in the union. And one woman, to be just like, she had this big kind of anti management slogan on her shirt. It was pretty in your face, and where people are interrupting us and confronting, like, well, what are you going to do? How's this any different? I don't trust you guys. And I was like, oh, let's find out. We've got 2 days together. Let's do what we can with it. And that was another one of those things that really made me deeply emotionally moved by that. And I was just watching people respond to even the most conflictual, the most cynical reactions, and respond with yes and really compassionate with them. All right. So first seeking to empathize with their situation before responding and giving their answers. It was really powerful to watch that, and it's become really part of their culture.
Lovely.
Yeah.
As I told you, I'm practicing some questions.
Yeah.
Can I try one out on you? And if it doesn't resonate, just skip it. Just tell me.
Okay, sure.
As you told that story, I mean, I felt chills myself.
Oh, good.
And the story of that's the first time I felt heard
Yeah.
in 20 years. So I'm curious what feels most alive for you as you tell me that story and your other stories.
Interesting. What feels most alive for me? I think this goes pretty deep here, but I grew up with a lot of depression and trauma, and trying desperately to change my environment to make it safer, and feeling powerless. And I think even now, at 60, even having been a positive change agent for decades, I still, every time I see something like that, go, yes, we can help people around us. We can't make them change. We can't change them. But we can help people live better, and we can help people who want to relate better. And so I think there's something that's very, very alive for me, is that it's constantly changing my own brain. It's helping me continue to grow and repair, and sort of the dark recesses of my brain. So go, yeah, and let go of the feeling that I have to control things, and just, because there's, like, as you know, there's plenty of people that we can't change. I had someone go through a high, I won't say the company's name, but very high level, very expensive leadership program. Like, the majority of the class was having some great experiences and really using stuff. But one person the whole time refused to use any of these things and just said, no, just teach me how to get promoted. I don't want to, this leadership stuff is just too soft. I was like, well, and I never could get through it the whole time. And I tried everything in the book, and nothing worked. So it's like, but it's okay. We don't have to control. We just do our best and focus on what we can do. And just trying to, in that situation, just keep yes-anding her, because I wanted to yell at her. I wanted to say, what's wrong with you? But that's not going to be helpful to anybody.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you said it's constantly changing my own brain.
Yeah.
And repair. You used the word repair.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how you think your work, you've already mentioned the woman who says, it's the first time I felt heard. How do you think your work contributes to healing in the organization or systems level beyond, and if you can connect that to your sense of inner repair?
Yeah, that is one of the most gratifying pieces that comes through here. And we talk about it openly. It depends on which organization I'm working with. Some are not as so sensitive or not as comfortable, but I'm pretty open with my past. I didn't used to be, but I got some feedback to give it a try, or prodding, and that if I do it appropriately, that people will open up more themselves and they'll feel more comfortable giving it a try. And truth is, everybody hurts from something, right? Regardless of what your life has been like. And So people being able to focus on the fact that everyone out there is going through something hard, right? Whether it's the loss of a pet to someone dying, or what sense of depression or drug addiction or whatever it is, everyone's going through challenges. And I find like being human about that and letting people kind of be open that those things are happening and practicing compassion. You see people not, I'm talking about the personal level, and you're asking about at the professional level, but I see people healing on both levels. Because truth is, we're the same person, of course, whether we're at home or whether we're at work, we're the same person. And I really have seen people talk about how they feel like their team is healing, right? From whether it's been rendered apart or frustrated or, and we don't talk about this, or I don't hear people talk about this much, but organizations go through trauma as well, right? So like the Red Cross is one of the most amazing organizations in the world, but they had to do major layoffs when the demand for blood dropped dramatically due to technological advances, right? So it's good news that the advances were like that, so less blood got wasted and all that, but it decimated many organizations that did that. And so that was traumatic, right? It had to be done, but it was like having open heart surgery, right? You had to do it. And so a lot of what we focus on is like, hey, we're actually helping the organization heal from, it's like having a car accident. You can't blame anybody in the organization, but they had to do what they had to do. And really teaching people how to not just hit the numbers so we don't go bankrupt, but also how to make sure that your heart is in everything we're doing. And that we're not just saving lives with the blood products, we also want to save each other. So yeah, I think there's a lot of healing in different ways. Yeah, that can happen there, and it can just be a normalized conversation. That's I love that when an organization gets to that point where that's just sort of a normal part of the conversation, instead of, oh my gosh, that's too much to say. I'm not supposed to talk about that at work. It's like, no, it's just who we are. Yeah.
So they're giving themselves permission, but is this accurate that you're also giving them permission to talk about where things hurt?
Yeah. 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 Absolutely giving them permission. And I think, and also having to demonstrate it. Because I find this kind of goes back to that aha when I was working at that small firm that didn't walk the talk. Like I was leading a 3-day executive retreat, and there was a lot of confusion because we're talking about very numbers driven folks, and I'm talking about very abstract things that we have to design together. And they're like, just tell us the plan. Like we have to co-design it. And on the third day, I realized, hey, there was some clarity better clarity I could have been doing. I could have gotten greater clarity, and I hadn't. So I started to apologize for that to the group. And someone was like, oh, you don't have to apologize. I'm like, no, this is exactly what we have to do as leaders, is when we make a mistake, we just own it and fix it. And you could just see the eyebrows going up. And you're like, what? And I did it. It was very uncomfortable for me and for them, but I did it and owned it. And then they started becoming more open to me addressing their challenges at that point in time. So I think that comes back to the authenticity that we were talking about before, right? Is really being willing to say, yeah, I made a mistake. Here's how we can fix it. But not with shame, it's just a matter of fact. We do this. Like people say, well, if you make a mistake, like, well, hold on. When we make mistakes, we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. So just know that, and then just be ready to own it, fix it, and learn from it as fast as possible. So it's part of why I like shifting from focusing on failure, because that feels so intimidating to people, to focus on experimentation. Yeah, we're always out there trying to experiment and doing things, and we have off days. So yeah, just learn, move on.
I'm noticing that there's a lot of empathy that you're talking about, both for yourself and for others. I don't want to ask you something too personal, but tell me if if you would like to share this, which is you said that it was very uncomfortable for you and for them when you shared your own, apologizing. What enabled you to be able to share things that were uncomfortable for you
That day or in general?
in general? Is
That's a
that
great question.
is that too personal?
No, it's okay. It is deeply personal, but it's okay to share because when I was young, like when I first started, I worked my first real job, if you will. Well, it's intellectual job. I was working at Boston University. I was doing team building programs and training programs, and I worked really hard. I got promoted, but I was a terrible leader. And one of the challenges was that I couldn't admit when I did made a mistake. I couldn't take negative feedback. I was extremely sensitive I know now from all the stuff that had happened to me as a child, right? And I was raised to hide everything, hide all the time and lie about feelings and all that. So, and I was really bad at leading because of those dynamics. But I got called on the carpet for my bad leadership pretty profoundly. I wasn't threatened to be fired, but it was essentially, you have to change. There's no question about it. And so I started asking people for help because I didn't know how to be a good leader. And so I hired a new employee right after this time, and I was, turning my new leaf, if you will. And so she wasn't scared of me because no one wanted to give me any feedback. No one wanted to help me. They were all afraid of me. Yeah, it was so bad. And my boss wouldn't give me any specific examples. So I asked her, I was like, hey, so what do you see? What's a good leader? And hey, what am I doing that's helping? What do you think I could do differently? And she was just completely trusting. And it was really interesting. She's probably like 20, maybe 25. And she's just giving me, really helpful information. And so two major things help. So one, I talked about therapy, right? The more I healed internally, the less I was afraid of that. The second thing is I noticed that some of my colleagues took feedback so easily, or at least it seemed to me. And I was like, how do you do that? I literally would explode at people. I was so defensive. I was in so much pain. Any negative feedback felt like it was questioning my worth as a person, right? It felt so threatening to me. And I wish I could remember who gave me this insight because it helped really change my life. But I walked away. Maybe it was a class I went to, a workshop or something. But I started looking at feedback as a gift, and when someone would give me the feedback, ignore all the guff, ignore the BS, ignore the exaggerations, the you always do, right? All that stuff, and just focus on the gift. This is essentially a yes and, which I didn't know at the time because I hadn't been exposed to that. But listen, and just listen for that. So I had one time someone talk to me for like 5 minutes, like, rah, rah, you facilitators do this. And I wanted all the anger going on, whatever. And I kept calming myself down and saying, oh, what's the gift here? What's the gift? And when he finished, I said, okay, so it sounds like you need more advance notice. And he's like, yeah. Oh, okay. How much do you need? A week? Oh, we don't usually know until about 9-10 days in advance. How about 2 weeks? He said, I'm sorry. He wanted 2 weeks. And I said, how about 1 week? He said, okay. And I walked away going, holy smoke, I could have had this huge fight. But by practicing looking at it as a gift, I was actually able to ignore the other stuff. And the more, as you know, I'm a real brain geek. And the more I learned about neuroscience, the more I understood that people exaggerate when they're upset. And then they often cool down and forget their exaggerations. And so instead of getting into a fight over those things when someone else is angry, focus on the gift, thank them for that. And not every time, but I'd say about 9 times out of 10, both parties cool down and we can move on. And that's really helped me a lot. A lot. And to the point where I thank people now, say, wow, thank you. I really need to hear your perspective on that. So, yeah.
That's so rich, Bob.
Thank you.
There's so many things in that. I try in my coaching to tell people that feedback is a gift because sometimes I'd rather hear it from you than from someone when there's higher stakes.
Oh, yeah, good point.
So tell me.
Yeah,
And the other thing is, if people are thinking something about me and they say it to one another, I want to know what they're saying.
right.
So the way that we can trick our brain into the giftness of the fact that it is a gift.
Mm,
Hmm. And the other piece about when you mentioned that, I'm not sure if you said that you took it personally. I can't remember the words you used, but this piece about there's me and then there's the feedback
right,
about
right.
my behavior, and they're two different things. And can I do
Yeah.
this kind of move? Are you familiar with the subject object move?
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
So making that object that I can look at, and it's separate from me, because
yeah.
people who equate the feedback with me as a person,
Mhm.
then they're not going to be able to take it in a productive way.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. That's right. And for people who can't separate those two, positive feedback can lead to the kind of arrogance I'd experienced. Right. So I had to, yeah, be able to say, and part of how I do that is to say, my goal, one of my top goals, is to get ever better at helping others go through positive transformation. So if they can give me any information that helps me get better at that, it's a
mm,
gift. So I look at it as it's feeding that.
lovely.
Yeah, and so I would say a majority of feedback is either useless or counterproductive. That's just what the research shows. That's what I've seen. And but instead of critiquing people for that, just try to empathize. Try to be curious about why they're saying what's going on. Even so, if I can learn something from it, that's great. And if I don't, at least they've been heard. And then they
Right.
feel safer coming back with something else when they're in a bit, when they're not angry, and they might have thought it through more carefully or something.
The other thing I was struck by when you said I was in so much pain, and I think we don't recognize that in people, that
Yeah,
sometimes when they can't take in the feed, they are in pain.
yeah.
And if we recognize that, maybe we could have more empathy for them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And there's some research done by the Neuro Leadership Institute that said about 80% of people surveyed in Fortune 500 companies, they say on their teams that feedback either doesn't work or it doesn't happen. And the neuroscience is very clear that it feels very threatening to people, which is, by the way, huge relief to me. Realize I wasn't the only one. Like, people used to tell me you're so sensitive. I'm like, hey, wait a second, everybody's sensitive. I may have been more than average, but still. But that was a really normalizing for me. It was great. But because of it, I try to use more brain-friendly approaches to gathering information and improving. I don't even use the word feedback most of the time. So it's like, yeah. So instead, we talk about, hey, what are the things that worked really well, which of course is feedback. We're talking about that. Now we say, all right, next time, what else can we do to be even better? And so any of the negative things that we didn't like, we now can give suggestions on how to fix that. And I find with that, people are much more comfortable to share these things, and it's more brain friendly, as I say. That's sort of part of Sparks tool I have, which is positive change questions that are more brain friendly. And I find it's just, yeah, it's so much easier. And I'll admit to you, part of the reason I spent so much time focusing on positive approaches like this is for my own sensitivity because I couldn't handle it. And I needed a gentler approach. And over time, I realized, well, a lot of people out there needed a gentler approach. I had one client, great guy, very, very competent, but he's like, feedback, feed forward, whatever. It's just words, Bob. It doesn't really matter. I can take feedback any form. And I said, well, actually, last year we were doing this leadership training program for your group, and you didn't take feedback very well there. And he said, I did too. I'm like, see, it's like, oh, you're right. um, it was one of those experiential moments that I was glad he blew up because it gave me a chance to point it out. Because even though he is very confident and can take a lot of tough feedback, he still can get defensive.
Mm.
And so if you get the same information without and bypassing all the defensiveness, it's just much easier for everybody. Well, let's feel for everyone. everyone, and information flows a lot more quickly. So yeah.
What sounds so unique in the way you present yourself and your story, Bob, is the parallel process that's going on between what you're recognizing in yourself and what the clients are recognizing in themselves and what you are enabling by the work you're doing with them. And because you keep connecting back to, well, it's good for me too. And I learned from that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, yeah, it's funny because I used to feel kind of embarrassed that I had to do these workarounds, but there was a tipping point where I realized this really is helping. Having to work through ways, and for around my sensitivity, because guess what? At least 10, 20, 30% of the people in any given room are trauma survivors, right? Of some form or another, and many times higher. So if I can test these things on myself and find methods that are more gentle and feel less threatened for myself, that's also going to enable that percentage of people. And then I had another epiphany at some point, which is that even for people that haven't gone through trauma, they still have the amygdala. They still gets hijacked, right? They still get flush full of cortisol and adrenaline and lose their cool, and you see things distorted. So every single person can use a way that's, I mean, I don't remember who came up with the term brain friendly, but I love it, right? There's a book called The Brain Friendly Workplace. And maybe she's the first one who came up with that, the author. She's a neuroscientist. But I love that thought about just saying, yeah, what's a way to communicate that's more brain friendly so that it works, it pulls us in, engages us instead of triggers defensiveness and fear and all that. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's times where we have to be obviously very blunt to put very clear boundaries and all that kind of stuff. But I find the vast majority of the time we can use much more brain friendly approaches, and then it's just better for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Finally, Bob, the word that occurs to me is redemption.
Interesting.
That through all your stories, that there was something redemptive, starting with yourself, redeeming your early childhood, whatever trauma you went through, the fact that you weren't a good leader back then, and all these things you learned may have redeemed the less stellar way that you showed up.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because traumatized kids aren't the best behaved either, right? So, and being able to look back and part of it, I mean, it's like this is a combination of coming to the realization that I was a good person, although I didn't deserve any of that crap. So I don't need redemption for who I am, thankfully, although part of my brain still thinks I do, so it helps. But it is powerful to be able to get redemption for, so, I don't blame myself for those things I did because I didn't know any better at the time. I was just part of that environment. But I still I want to make more good in the world, and I want to make a lot more good and I feel like at this point in time, the ledger's really good. I'm in the black. It took a while. Yeah. It took a while before I feel like, okay, I feel like, yeah, no, I've done enough that I feel redeemed, I guess. I didn't think of the word at the time. But yeah, I felt, I told you I used to volunteer with trauma survivors for about 7 or 8 years. And about halfway through it, it hit me at one point, hey, I really am a good person. If I wasn't a good person, I wouldn't be doing this and I wouldn't find it so gratifying. I was like, oh, that's nice. And just sort of to sit with that truth. And now it's just like, yeah, it's not a big deal. It's just nice. But I like feeling that about myself.
Absolutely.
That was redeeming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good insight. I never used that word before. You mentioned that to me. Yeah.
Oh. Well, that seems like a good note to end on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing your presence to this conversation.
Oh, you're welcome.
I really appreciate how we made meaning together.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you have wonderful questions, and you feel very safe to talk to. So I loved it, and I really love the generative nature of your questions. It's really
Oh,
thought
thank
provoking and deepening.
thank
Yeah.
you so much. Let me just turn off the recording.